Hi, I'm Rebecca Jones, and I am recovered from substance use. I've been recovered for 14 years, and I currently live in Richland County. Today, I am a mother and a daughter and a niece. I am a CDCA, and I'm a person that supports others going through the same struggles that I went through.
Rebecca, thank you so much for coming out and speaking to On the Road to Recovery. I know it's taking time out of your busy life to come do this is can be tough, but we really appreciate you being able to share your story with us today. I would like to start if you could just describe your childhood.
My childhood. Well, I had a pretty decent childhood as far as my family life was very stable. I had two parents in the home, and we had enough money to provide basic needs and above basic needs, even. My parents were very loving, and but I had my own struggles. I did go through childhood sexual abuse, which they didn't know about, so it was really hard to deal with me because as a child you don't know how to deal with that, and I didn't know how to talk about it or tell them about it, and so they just seen me kind of as a crazy little child, because I was acting out, and I think my teen years were probably like the worst because I didn't, we're going through puberty and dealing with emotions that we don't really know. Well, for me, I didn't really know how to deal with.
Can you share a little bit about your first use or your first uses of substances?
Yes. So my first uses of any type of substance was in middle school. It was alcohol and marijuana. Just hanging out at a friend's house, and they had older siblings that were doing it, so they introduced us to that, and I really liked the way that it made me feel, and so it was something that I started using occasionally after that.
So you talked a little bit about your trauma. What was do you mind sharing a little bit more about that, if that's something that you can?
I was pretty young when it happened. I mean, it was family members, cousins. We would go to stay at a relative's house, and then it would be like, okay, it's nap time for everyone, and that's when it would take place. And they were a lot older. They were definitely like older teenagers.
How do you think that affected your mental health growing up?
It affected it a lot in even ways that I didn't recognize at the time. I definitely associated love with sex, and which led me to be quite promiscuous at a young age and throughout my life, because we all want to be loved, and I thought, well, these are my family members that are supposed to love me, so maybe that's what happens. Maybe that's what happens to people that love you, or maybe that's what maybe that was their way of expressing love to me.
Can you describe when your addiction started to become really problematic?
Yes, it was pretty early on. I would say in high school. I started using heavier drugs, like a lot of psychedelics, and I got into cocaine, and I really liked the way that cocaine made me feel. It was an upper, it gave me energy, it made me feel happy and good, and it really made me not think about all the BS. So that's when I got pretty frequent into using, like, often, and then of course the people that I was around, they were all using, so it became like a daily thing, or several times a week. I was even using and going to class. Like, it was just really starting to get out of hand at that point.
Share with me about your progression in your addiction.
Yes. So for me, it was a little bit maybe different than other people because I would go through periods. So I would say, oh, I'm going to, I would use for like a year. Then I would go to treatment. Not because I wanted to go to treatment, because maybe my family wanted me to go, or by the age of 19, I already had a criminal history. So then it was like court mandated that I go, and I'm like, well, I'm just going to go so I can get it over with, and then I can go back to doing what I want. And also I had a few children in between. I had my first very young. I got pregnant at 16. And so I was able to stay clean during my pregnancy and for a while after I had her.
How was your parenting affected by your use?
It was highly affected by my use. Not only my use, but being a child, having a child. Even though I had the support of my family, I felt like I had to grow up really fast because of that, and I didn't ever have those opportunities that teenagers have. So a lot of times I would leave my children at my mom's house and go out and use. There were periods where I would leave them, not contact them, and they would come and see me at work because that's the only place that they could bring my children to see me. And it was sad because my kids were crying for me, and I just didn't. I wanted to use, but I knew I had to leave the kids over there to go do what I wanted to do. Yeah. I want to continue on that though because later in my use, I finally at some point lost my children, and it wasn't CPS, but it was my family that took them. And now I see that that was a great thing to do, but it was very difficult to deal with.
Sure, absolutely. Talk about your legal history a little bit. Did you ever
Yes.
spend time in prison?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Do you mind talking about
So, yeah, I don't mind at all. Mostly I started doing crimes because whatever man that I was hanging out with was doing crimes. And so, the first thing that I got in trouble with, I actually didn't even really do, but I knew about it and I was there when it was taking place. So, we would break into businesses and steal things to support our drug habit, of course. And so I got those felonies pretty young. I was 19, and then once you get in the system, it's really difficult to get out, especially when you're a user, because you want to live this lifestyle that doesn't fit with the justice involvement. So I, from the age of 19 until in my 30s, I've been to jail 29 times. I spent time in prison after that. I had stolen a car and broke into a house. I had drugs on me, and they were more than happy to send me to prison because, my criminal background at that point had built up so much. And I went to prison. I got sentenced to 2 years. I was able to get out in a year, get into a program.
Let's talk about the lowest point of your addiction. Whether it was legal, family, relationships, like what was the lowest, like right before the last use?
Yes. So, I want to say that throughout my use, I put myself in situations to go through a lot more trauma. So, it wasn't just the childhood abuse that took place, but I was placing myself in dangerous situations and going through all this. And so because of that, I wanted to use more. Because as soon as I got sober, I had to fill all that. And so for me, it was meth use. I got really heavy into meth use. I remember I lost my home. I was homeless. My kids were gone. I felt like I just really had no reason to even get clean. I just wanted to use more and more and more because it just was the only thing that would numb all of the junk that I was feeling. I had gotten out of prison and I relapsed, and it was so bad. I just was sometimes just walking around at night, sleeping under trees. Like, I just was just going through the motions. I was in a relationship and domestic violence took place, and I just got so tired of living like that, going through it, that I finally just said, I'm willing to do whatever I have to do to stop this. I was not a pleasant person to be around. I was mean to people. I felt like I wanted to be loved properly, and I'm searching for love in all the wrong places, and nobody's loving me how I want to be loved and how I felt I was worth loving. So I was very depressed. I've tried to commit suicide before. I just hated myself a lot. As much as you could probably hate yourself, that's how I felt about myself.
What are some stigmas or barriers that you held when you first started seeking help, or this last time when you were seeking help?
Well, one big thing that was a barrier for me at the time when I really wanted help was that in order to get help almost, you had to have a little clean time. So I knew we had these homes that people would buy, and they would say, hey, if you're in recovery, you can rent a room and live here, you know. But in order to get into one, they wanted you to have like a few weeks of clean time, which there's no way I could do that back then. Um, the judgment that comes with it, the way people look at you and treat you, even in, unfortunately, some places that you go to for help. Um, Sometimes you have to deal with people that are still looking down on you and judging you, and that's very unfortunate. Insurance wasn't really an issue because I was on Medicaid, but also not really knowing what resources were out there to help me. It wasn't like it is today,
Yeah.
for sure.
What was one of your greatest supports in your early recovery?
My mom. My parents have been a really amazing support to me through all of it. No matter what I did, they always still loved me. Um, they would come visit me in prison. Like, they didn't have to do those things, you know. They were always there to cheer me on when I was doing the right thing.
What kind of recovery program did you end up working?
So, the first real time that I went to recovery was in prison, because it was at that point, sitting in prison, I mean, I was there for a few weeks when I finally said, what the fuck are you doing? Like, you're actually in prison right now. Like I said, I lived most of my life pretending like things didn't happen. That's how I dealt with it. Like, okay, I went through this, I'm just gonna act like it didn't happen and move on. Consequences like going to jail were not a big deal to me. It was just get through it, and you know. But it was when I was finally in prison, and I got into the treatment. I wanted treatment at that point because I'm like, something has to change. I don't want to spend my whole life in prison. I don't want to come back after this. I don't want to keep going through this cycle. Why are you doing this, Rebecca? And it was in there that I had been in treatment 7 times already. And it was the first time that I looked at the material and had like a realization, like, oh, I mean, I remember hearing something about this, but now I'm finally clicking because I actually wanted to learn the material, and that was the true treatment time for me.
How has your employment changed throughout your recovery journey?
I would say about 6 years ago, I got like my first real job, you know, and I worked at a school lunch lady, so that was kind of cool. And then I was a crossing guard, and then I got a job working for the county that I lived in California, working in the office there. And that led me to get a job working with people that came out of prison, like case managing, and which was like a dream for me because that was definitely the demographic that I wanted to work with. And so when I moved to Ohio after that, I got a job now working with people that struggle with substance use. So those skills were able to help me get this job, you know, the skills that I had. But only being in the workforce for like 6.5 years, I've been at my job for 4.5. So
that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Like, and so you have a CDCA.
I have my CDCA, but I don't actively use it like as a CDCA. I use it for dealing with my clients. I also want to mention that I am a business owner.
Oh, very cool.
So that's something that I did about 2 years ago. We opened a shop in our town, and so that is like a huge accomplishment for me.
Yes, I love that.
Yes.
Have you heard of peer support?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have your peer support license?
I do not have my peer support license. Okay. I really love peer supporters and what they do. For me, the reason that holds me from that is because I don't want to be available 24 hours a day for my own mental health.
Yeah. I get that. I don't do that, and I'm a peer supporter, but I know 24 hours for me.
Yeah.
So.
Well, most of the ones that I've heard that are local to us do that, and I'm just, I can't do that. Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's great.
It is.
Okay, so what do you do for your recovery today?
Well, I believe in God, and I feel like God has absolutely been a huge part of my recovery. I help others. I mean, I'm at a point in my recovery right now where like I don't have to do a lot. But that's me. Everyone is different. I don't really attend meetings, but I attend a lot of things through work, and I host a lot of really amazing events that's therapeutic to me. Spend time with my family. I have two other children now that I raise, and I'm pretty boring these days.
Did you end up getting custody back of your other children as well?
So I did not get custody back, but when I got out of prison and I got my shit together, I asked my daughter if she wanted to come home with me or if she felt more comfortable at my mom's house, and she wanted to stay there, so I let her. We have an amazing relationship today. My son and my daughter, their kids are so amazing and resilient, and they tell me now that they're proud of me, and some days I'll have bad days and call them crying and like, I'm sorry for everything I put you through, and they're like, Mom,
Right.
we don't even think about that stuff, and they just said that the best thing I could ever do for them is just do good, and that's what I'm doing today.
What dreams do you have for your future?
Well, one of my dreams that I have, and I'm going to make it happen, is I'm going to buy a house and I'm going to have it be for people coming out of prison. I'm super, super, my heart is really for people that struggle with incarceration, juveniles, as well as adults. I did work in the prisons when I was in California. I guess I forgot to mention that part. But I learned a lot about the struggles and why people are there, and it just really made me have a heart. They need to come out of prison and have a safe, stable place to go. Sometimes they need to learn some life skills, and I want to provide that for them.
Can you share some words of inspiration for someone who is still struggling?
My words of inspiration for someone who is struggling is that it's okay. It's okay to be struggling. There's hope, and there's people that love you and will support you, and you are worth getting the help, and you are worth so much, and you are so loved.
Is there anything else that we missed that you want to share? Maybe some of the things you were thinking about before this that maybe we missed.
I want to just maybe acknowledge that it's okay to have mental health issues. When you go through trauma and different things in your life, it's very, very common to have mental health issues associated with that. And that is something that there has been a stigma on, that it's not okay, you're crazy, you're this, you're that, but that's not true. It's okay, and I love that it's being acknowledged these days, and that there is so much support for it these days.
Rebecca, I want to thank you for coming out today and sharing your hope with us here in Holmes County, Ohio. I know it was a trek for you to get out here, but we really do appreciate it. Your story is going to help so many people that are struggling today, and hopefully give some inspiration to people to continue their path of recovery.